with me to the book of Luke, chapter 15 and verse 11. Then he said, a certain man had 2 sons. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me. So he divided to them his livelihood. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together, journeyed to a far country, and there wasted his possessions with prodigal living. But when he had spent all, there arose a severe famine in that land, and he began to be in want. Then he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine. Then he gladly have filled his stomach with the pods that the swine ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, mark that word, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, mark also that line, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But when he was still a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion, and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight, and am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, bring me out the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet. And bring the fatted calf here and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to marry. Restoration is a process. The first thing for you to do is to diagnose, to identify, to recognize your current situation. This man says, when he came, the Bible says, when he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired servants are full to spare, and here I am starving to death. We must understand where we are currently. You have to call yourself. We were told you these words by our teachers in school. Call yourself for a meeting. Ushisikia word. Juite mkutano. Hey, yes. Call yourself for a meeting. And ask yourself, Elias, where I am today, is it where I'm supposed to be? Here is a question. This is where I am today. But is it where I am supposed to be? This man said, how many of my father's hired servants? He remembered where he had grown up from. You have to ask yourself a question. Is this where I am supposed to be in my life? Is there another place I should have been? Is there another state I should have been? Where am I now? And then number 2, in the process, have a clear positive attitude. Because it is not going to end at wishing things. Because verse 1 is just spoke to himself. But then after speaking to himself, what next? This man would have said, I will continue sitting here, or I will go and look for another job. This man, or he would have said, I will arise and go to my friends. He did not say, I'm arising to go back to something else. He says, I want to go back to my father. Look at those words. He still remembers that he had a father. And I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. Point number 3. You have to take care of who you talk to. Who do you share your ideas with? The Bible says, and the prodigal son, he said to himself. So, there are some decisions, if you have to make in life, you have to talk only to yourself. Because in this life, you will meet people that are going to discourage you. People would have told this guy, how do you go back to your father? You have already used your share of inheritance. So the Bible says, this guy spoke to himself. Who do you share your ideas with? Who do you talk to? Because there are discouragers in this life. There are people who will tell you, you cannot make it in this situation. They'll give you all types of reasons as to why you should not do what you have purposed to do. You must be able sometimes to share your situations with also like-minded people. You can speak to yourself, but also you can talk to like-minded people. Number 4, you have to take a bold step. Bible says, chapter 15, verse 20. He arose and came to his father. I'm reminded of the story of this woman who had the flow of blood for 12 years. She spoke to herself and said, if only I touch the hem of the... If only I do what? Look at those words. If only I touch. Did she do it? Yes. So you have to speak, and then after speaking, you have to act. Very simple. If you continue speaking, you can even tell the story for 1 year. Next year I'll start a business. You see, I will start a business. Church, do you know I'm going to start a business? Then next year I come and tell you, guys, I will start until now you start taking some bold steps. There are risks into it, but I'm going to attempt. And because we said have a positive mindset, that means you will even have courage now when you are doing it. This woman said, I have been in this situation for 12 years. I know it is not good for me, health-wise, to go and do this. But this lady had the courage of going to touch the hem of the garment of Jesus. If you look at the book of 2 Kings, chapter 7 and verse 5. It's the story of the 4 lepers. These men, they had been alienated from the society. They knew, if I have leprosy, then I have become an outcast. They knew their position in the society. But these men spoke to one another. These men spoke to one another. If we say we'll go into the city, the farming is still there, and we will die. And if we stay here, we will die. So let's go over to the camp of the Arameans and surrender. If they spare us, we will live. If they kill us, then we die. These men said, just like the prodigal son, why should I continue living in this situation? Why? And for them they also said, if they spare us, we live. If they kill us, then we die. We can only die once anyway. Because these men were starving outside the city. There was no food outside the city gate. There was famine. And they knew that if they went inside the city, they were not wanted there. They were not supposed to interact with other people. But they said, we will go into the city. The same principle. You speak to yourself, speak to one another, get ideas, and then the next thing is, you take a step. That's what they did. At dusk, they got up and went to the camp of the Arameans. When they reached the edge of the camp, no one was there. And the story continues. A principle of taking bold steps forward. We have to become like these lepers, whereby we are going to say, I am tired of my current situation. I am tired of where I am. I want to become better. I want to go back to my father. The arms of the father were wide open to receive the son back. But there was a process this man had to go through. There was a process. He spoke to himself. He acted, and the Father received him. Book of Isaiah 61 verse 7 gives us the final reward here. What will happen? It says, instead of your shame, you will receive a double portion. May that be your word, that instead of your shame, you are going to receive a double portion. Instead of disgrace, you are going to rejoice in your inheritance. You will inherit a double portion in your land, and everlasting joy will be yours. It shall be yours. God is restoring us. God is restoring our health. God is restoring our families. God is restoring our finances. God is restoring the joy of our salvation. Let's clap for the Lord.